Hello. I wanted to go through and just do a little walkthrough of some of the material to show what's expected of you this week, and part of it is going to be the Introduction to Programming section of the course, and I've already gone through it here on my own, but if you haven't gone through it yet, I just want to do a little walkthrough so you can kind of see what to expect. So one thing that I suggest when you're clicking on these courses is to, hit the info, the info button. That'll pop up here, that I, and that'll give you a nice summary of everything that is so far unlocked in this course. So you can see we have two sections that are Introduction to Programming, and on this first section it has a video to watch. Just watch parts 1 through 5 of this whole course. There's another resource here which is for web dev, explaining kind of web development, and that's a GitHub repository that has a big kind of a document in there that explains things. And then the last thing in that section is this this article on Free Code Camp, and it goes through and describes, and there's some videos, describes some of the basics as well. So those are the introductory things about programming. Then in the next section, if I go back to this info, this next section was a quiz. So you can do that. And then we get to the introduction to Git, and I think this one was one that I wanted to step through maybe in more detail, because I think Git is maybe one of the more confusing things to understand, but it's incredibly useful. So you'll be using Git a lot if you're especially working with other people, and it's the place where you keep your code. And so let's step into that, and let's walk through. I'm just going to walk through some of this and do this. We can do this together, and you can see how it goes. So this is a site that describes Git, and let's see if I can get this to show up all on the screen at once. This image is just kind of an infographic, and it shows some of the common Git commands. Git is you will use it from the command line. So when you are entering commands, if you type in, I'm going to Windows on Chrome. So this is a command line editor. I would open up 2 of them. Let's bring that up. Okay. So this is a place where you can get like directories. It's like the old style DOS commands. But if we type Git here, it doesn't know what the Git command is. So that's what we're going to first address, is getting Git on our computer. So I'm going to close this command window. And if you go down here, it says download Git. Okay, so we'll do that first. I'm going to get Git for Windows. And then there's a bunch of questions in here too, which I also think were kind of confusing. I'm going to step through those dialogues too, because they are a little confusing for, kind of asking questions where you might not even know what the answer is. So go through the general license. It's going to install edit program files /git, and I'll just leave the standard, just the defaults here. It's going to create a folder, the start menu folder. That's fine. It asks for a text editor about Vim. I'm going to change that to Nano, which is like a really simple text editor. That's just my preference. I don't use Vim myself. We'll let Git decide on the feature branches. We're going to use Git from the command line and from third-party software. That's fine. We'll use it there. Use their OpenSSL library. Check out Windows-style commit Unix-style line endings. Okay, this one is like esoteric. You could probably just use the defaults, but what's going on here is that when you're on a Windows machine and you're in a text editor, at the end of every line, there are ASCII codes in there for all the text you're typing in there. In Windows, they put a carriage return and a line feed, 2 characters at the end of every line. Where on Linux, they just put a line feed at the end of every line. So when you have developers working on Linux and Windows, both using the same repository, they don't want the line endings to kind of interfere with things. So Git has a default where only the line feeds are stored in the repository that's in the cloud. Whereas on your local machine, you can have carriage return line feeds on there. And so it'll convert your files as whenever they are being brought down or sent back up again. So this just makes Windows play nice with Linux users. So we'll leave that there. We'll go ahead and here I want to use the Windows default console window instead of this min-tty. Just feeling that we have one console window, we can do all the commands instead of, because it says here that if you launch other programs like Python, then you have to use a different command. So I'd rather not do that. So I'm just going to use the standard Windows console. There are other options too, like the Windows terminal and PowerShell, things like that. But for now, we'll just keep it simple. It's a Windows command shell. And then the default has a fast forward merge. You have no idea what that is yet if you haven't used Git yet. The Git credential manager, enable file, and don't turn on experiments. Okay, so we answered all the questions. Download. I have a pretty fast internet connection. And here I'm going to launch Git Bash. Okay, what is Git Bash? Git Bash is like the Windows command prompt, except it has some other commands that are like Linux. So I think I could use ls, or ls-a. So that command will show me ls-l. There we go. Yeah. So those are how you list files in Linux. If I type dir here, it knows that too. But you can do commands like pwd to print the working directory. So stuff like that. So if you know the Linux commands, you can use that. Is there a $home? Yeah, WGA utility account. That's weird. Okay. So I'm doing this inside of a Windows sandbox, so it won't look exactly like your machine, but I wanted to have a clean Windows installation for this recording, so I don't have any other software. This is a generic Windows installation. Okay, it's great. So now we have Git, and if I type Git here, now the Git command shows some help because that's not a complete command, but it shows all the different options you can do and things like that. So let's go back to the introduction here. Oh, the getting started with Git. Where's this? Where is it? Getting started with Git. This is it. No. Oh, I think I have to go back from here. This is where we were. Okay. So Git is a source control program which is going to help you on your computer manage your files and share them with other people. GitHub is a server that talks to Git, and you can push your code to GitHub. And so GitHub is like the universal standard. Everybody uses GitHub nowadays. There are other alternatives, but they're pretty uncommon. Okay, going back to what's in this tutorial at the very top. Right after we download Git, it says you set some things to configure your Git account. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and just type what they have here. Git config, and this is in my Git Bash program. Let me show you how to launch that, because it launched it right immediately after. If I type Git Bash in Windows and then run that app, there we go. And we have it back again. And we are in the users WDGA utility account, but that would be your name typically, or the username of your signed in Windows user. So what we want to do now is do the same commands that they had up here. So I'm going to say git config global user.name, and I'm going to give my name Mike Koss, and git config global user.email, and that's cto@reskillamericans.org. Okay, and now if I say git config -- list, it'll show what I've done right here. So you can see down here, among other configurations that were set up by default for me, I have my username and my email. So whenever I send code to the server, it'll be able to identify me. So now it says let's create a GitHub account. So let's go to github.com. Actually, why don't I open that in a new tab? Let's create a new tab. And here is GitHub. And let's sign up for an account. I'll just go ahead and sign up for a brand new account myself. My username, I'm going to call myself mccoss_RA. Oh, only alphabet, simple hyphen, mccoss-RA. There we go. I can do that. cto@reskillamericans.org. And then come up with a password. Let's see. 15 characters, or 8 characters, including a number in lowercase. Okay. Okay. And we're going to verify this account. Oh. Let's see, the spiral galaxy there. There. Okay. Create account. Okay, I'll go ahead and save that password. All right, and we'll say I'm a software engineer and I'm going to learn to code. And I'm going to learn Git and GitHub. And let's go ahead and just complete that. Okay, now I have to verify my email address, which I have over here on this other computer. Okay, I verified it. Say refresh. There we go. All right. So now I have a GitHub account, and I think for the minimum, if I go to this home, let's see, and go to my profile, and here's my profile, github.com/mccossra. That'll be the next assignment. You just need to copy that link and send it to the instructors. But why don't we do some of the lesson and just create a repository, and I'll explain a little bit in words about Git. And let's see, I'll get rid of that, and we're back here. Okay, so we did that. We created a GitHub account, and so what is Git for? Git is for keeping track of your files and sharing them with other users through that server. So let's go through this example here. We're going to create our own repository of files. So first of all, I'm going to mkdir. Let's see, can I make that a little bit bigger font here? Let's see, how do I do that? It doesn't like that keyboard. Let's change the font size. Yeah, that's better. Should be able to see that really well. Okay. So that's my current directory. I'm going to make dir, I'm going to call it my first project, and we'll cd into change the directory to my first project. I hit tab there to do command completion in the git bash. So there are a lot of like shortcuts. Hopefully I'll when you're using a command line here, I'll try to call out the shortcuts that I'm using. So now that's our current directory, my first project. We're in that directory now. And if we wanted to go see that in the file system, that's also useful. Like if we can go with the file manager, file explorer, I can go look at, okay, it's a little confusing. If I see like where I have my documents and pictures, I don't see my the folder I just created. You have to go to the local disk and find users, and there you can see the name of the current user, and then here's all the things at the top level of that current user's account. And you see here my first project. Documents is also here, but I think this is like an alias to it, but so that we didn't see it side by side. But there's my first project, and it's an empty folder. So we'll just go ahead and leave this file explorer behind here, and we'll continue creating some files here. So it said the first thing to do is do git init, and what that does is it creates a local file here called .git, and it's actually a directory that has a bunch of stuff in it that you're not supposed to touch, but it's what keeps track of what's going on with the rest of your files. We have initialized our repository, and we can do now a command like git status, which will tell, oh, sorry, here's my directory, my first project, git status, and we can say nothing to commit, which means that you don't have any files on your local project, you don't have any files in your directory that are not yet in the repository. So the files that you have locally are the ones you can see are not necessarily in the repository yet. So we'll see how that works. So now it says we want to add. You can add files to what's called the staging area. So that means before you add a file to the repository, you want to kind of set them up so that they're ready to go and get added. So let's do that. Let's write a little file. Let's just run nano, and this is a sample file in my repository. Okay, and we'll just do that. And let's see. And I'm going to call this sample.txt. Okay. And if I look at the directory here, I see sample.txt, and there it is. It's a sample file in my repository. So I can say git add sample.txt. All right, here it's warning us about the line feeds and carriage returns, which is what we wanted to do. And now if I say git status, it says, there is a new file, sample.txt, which is going to be added to the repository. And if you want to now commit that file into the repository and say, yes, all the files are just right, then you say git commit, and then usually give a comment with a -m, a message. So my first commit. Okay, now if I say git status, it says nothing more to commit. The tree is clean, and that file is in the repository. Okay, now that we have put stuff in the repository, we can do things like git log, which shows a history of the repository, and it has my name and email address, what date I did my commit, and what is in it. So there are a bunch of flags you can add to the git command, to the git log command. So one of them is stat. So if you really wanted to see what was going on, you'd say, well, okay, it had a file here where it had 2 lines added. It had like a line and a carriage return, and things like that. So anyway, that tells you a little bit about what is in the git log command. And at any time, if you want to know how to use the command, you say git log -- help, and it'll bring up the web browser. On Windows it does anyway, and it shows you the manual page kind of describing how to use the git log command. But be warned, these are pretty complicated, and there's a lot of options here. It's kind of hard to learn, so it's better to probably just go to a cheat sheet for Git and find the most common commands to start. The manual pages are actually pretty extensive. So, okay, so we had our first commit. Now we are going to create a repository on GitHub. So if we go back to GitHub, did I save that? I think maybe yeah, here we are. So if I can go to repositories here, it says I don't have a repository, so let's call my first project, and we're going to create it as a new repository. Oh, what did I just type there? Didn't I? What was that? What was this? Was this just a search box? That was a search box. Sorry. So just go new, and then my first repository. Or no, I'm sorry, my first project. That's what we called it. It's going to be public, and this is a demo project. And I'm not going to add any of these files, but I'm just going to create this repository as an empty repository. So now it exists on GitHub. So now we need to take our local copy and connect it to that remote copy. And that's what this line does here. Git remote add origin, and then there's a long URL here. So what I'm going to do here, if you go to your project and you go to, let's see. Oh, here. Actually, when you start a new project, it tells you kind of what steps to do to push an existing repository here. So, and it gives you the commands, including everything you need. So I can copy that line here and push it through the command lines here. So if I right-click, that pastes it into this command, git bash. Okay, so that added the origin. So if I say stat, it still doesn't do anything there, but git branch.m main. Okay, so their suggestion here, you do a git branch-m main. That changes the name of your, oh, let's see, copy this. The name of your master branch to main. Okay, so now if I say git branch here, yep, and my files are still here. No. Okay, and now I'm going to say git push origin main. Let's try that. Okay, so now it says it wants me to sign in with the browser to verify I am who I say I am. I'm going to authorize the credential manager. It says it succeeded, and then it says branch main has been set to track the local branch. And if I refresh this page on my repository, there we go, and we can see something called sample text. And there it is, and you can see what the contents of that file was. I had a blank line after the other line. So we can try doing this other thing where we can add a file on GitHub and then pull it down to our local repository. So let's create a new file, and I'm going to call this readme.md. And there's a little text editor here, and I'm using Markdown script. This is a README file. This is a sample project. Okay. And then we can commit this file, and we can say the commit is creating a README on GitHub. And I commit the new file. There we go. And README, files called README in the repository have a special meaning in GitHub. They will show them automatically down here so people can refer to them. But now you'll see that there's an extra file on GitHub than there is on my local machine. If I go, actually I want to say git ls files. So that's just to tell you what files are here. Git log, you can see it's just the first commit. That's all we have here. But if I do git pull, then it's going to go to the server and say, do you have any files that are more recent than I have? And it says it found some deltas, and then it gives you some status about what it's doing, and it says there's a README file with 3 new files. And now if I look in our current directory, we have 2 files. And we have the README file there and our original sample file there. So that is a quick summary of Git, and you see now Git status, we should say everything's up to date, right? And if I were to then like edit the README file locally, I can say I added this file on my Windows machine, Control S, Control X. Okay, so there, now if I say git status, it says, oh, there's a modified README. So I have to say git add README. Remember, I want to stage that file to be added. Then I'm gonna, if I look at the status of what's about to be added, it's the README file. And I can say git commit -m added another README line. Now that it's still not up on the repo, it's just my local repository has it, but it's still not up on GitHub. So if I want to push it to GitHub, I say git push, and it will copy all the local changes up to the server. And so now if I go back to the server and refresh this page, there you can see I added this file on my Windows machine. So it edited that. Okay. And then I think for your assignment, you just have to go send a copy of your, if you go to your profile, you'll see the name of your GitHub repository there. And here you can see I have my first project, and it keeps track of all the code that you've done in history in your profile. So your online GitHub profile will be eventually like a really good part of your resume. So anyway, that is, I think there's more stuff in here about Git, about commit messages, working with other people, but I think I will leave that for a later day. I just wanted to give you a general idea of what Git is used for and how it works with the command line and the server. So, all right. Thanks, everyone. See you later.